Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the TradeMarke Podcast. We are here today with Tara from Bellrock, and we're going to talk all things process management, business consulting, really just helping you operationalize your business and make it make sense for you. Tara, it's so great that you're on. Can you give us just a little bit of information about Bellrock and how it got started, and what was your why
Oh,
behind this business?
I sure can. Well, my why is really easy. I needed a job. It was 2008 and the world economy had melted down and I had moved back to Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from. And so I looked around to get a job doing the kind of work that I love to do, which was really deep implementation in small business and really helping them improve, not just giving recommendations, but actually going in and putting systems in place. And I couldn't find anyone that was doing that kind of work to hire me. So I had to start my own. And it's been a great journey. And a couple of years ago, I accomplished my own BHAG, which was to not have to run the thing anymore. I just really wanted to be the consultant. I didn't want to have to run the whole company. And so my business partner took over, and here we are.
Oh, I love that. Let's dive into that a little bit too, because BHAGs are important if they're actually properly implemented. So, okay, let me add the intro and then we'll get started.
Step into the Trademark, your go-to podcast for everything marketing in the trades. Hosted by award-winning industry marketing experts Sarah Ghirardo from Remarkable and Eric Thomas from Rival Digital. Together, we're here to unite the worlds of trades and marketing, bringing you insights, stories, and strategies from the heart of the industry. Whether you're a trade professional, a marketing expert, or somewhere in between, this is the place for you. Listen in as we're here for the big ideas, the game changers, and the everyday successes. Because at the Trademark, we're with the trades and for the trades.
All right, perfect. So let's start with the BHAG, right? So
Yeah.
let's explain what a BHAG is, if you can, and then tell me about the strategic operations or opportunities that you're seeing when it comes to, writing down the idea and then taking action and then the missed opportunities in between.
Absolutely. Okay. So BHAG is an acronym for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. And it was coined by Jim Collins quite a while ago. And the common example that people use when they're talking about a BHAG is President Kennedy walking around NASA. And the BHAG there was to put a man on the moon and bring him home safely. And so that was their BHAG, and everybody was working toward it. And the story is that he's walking around, and there's some guy mopping the floors, and he says, "And what did you do here? What do you do here, sir?" And the guy says, "I put people on the moon." So the idea of a BHAG is to get everybody focused on what it is that the organization is trying to accomplish. And I think of a BHAG as a measure of purpose. So if the purpose is why we do it, the BHAG is whether we got there or not. That's how I think of it. So when I set out personally to get a job doing what I loved, my BHAG was to get a job doing things that I loved. My BHAG, my personal one, not my company one. And so when I was able to go back to just having a job and not having to run the business, I accomplished my BHAG, which actually is kind of unusual for small business consulting. Usually the founder is the consultant and there aren't necessarily other employees and they kind of have to run the thing and it dies with them. But mine isn't going to.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. And I think a lot of companies will say, hey, my BHAG is a revenue goal
Yeah.
of, and so tell us why that's not, why that is or why that isn't a BHAG.
Well, first of all, it's a great example and it can be a revenue goal. And a revenue goal is certainly a way to measure progress. The problem with a revenue goal is that it's not very inspiring to the people who work there. I mean, imagine the guy mopping the floor at NASA going, "It's my goal to spend this much," like it just doesn't even make sense, right? It
Right.
doesn't tug at the heart. So while revenue can be a measure of success, we want to have something greater. And that's why we talk about purpose. So what is the company's purpose? Why does it exist? I work with a lot of construction companies. I work with a lot of smaller trades. And I have to say that it is really hard for them usually to come up with their BHAG. What do they want this to be? Or sometimes their goal, their BHAG will be to sell someday. And that's not inspiring to their staff either, unless they're looking to sell it internally. So it's hard to come up with this, and coming up with a strong BHAG, almost by definition, if you have a strong BHAG, it means you're going to have to say no to some things. So being able to say no is one test of whether it's a good BHAG. If there's a no, if you're making a choice, this versus that. And that's another reason that revenue can be a metric, but it isn't a great BHAG, because then, in fact, by definition, it could cause you to say yes to everything, which is not a great way to get to a revenue target.
I think that's a great point, is the BHAG is aligned to a purpose, and it drives the business forward, right?
Yeah.
It aligns everybody with a common goal and a commonality of what we are chasing or what we're going to accomplish. Because I believe in writing things down, right? When you speak and write things into existence, it it happens, it manifests into what it can be. And I think, like, what you said is that a lot of times we say yes to everything to get to where we believe our BHAG could be accomplished. But, like, there's also small wins along the way and small things that you have to say no to, because
Yeah.
when you say yes too much, you become the yes person, and it doesn't always align to the end purpose. Yeah. And what a great point for contractors. They often start with, "Hey, I can solve this problem," and they become the solution provider, but they don't think about, like, what their why.
Yeah,
So
well, I agree with you, and I also think that often contractors start in a very similar way that I did, which
yeah,
is they needed a job, they had a specific job that they wanted, and they couldn't find it, or they didn't, or they thought it would be easy to run a business, or, "Hey, I can do that." And so they did it, like, just to get started, without maybe really thinking about what could this be one day. And it's the ones that really start focusing in on strategy at an early point in their careers that can accomplish really incredible things. Not focusing on that, you can still make good money, you can still do well and serve your clients well, you can do all that stuff, but greatness requires some sort of thinking and drawing some lines in the sand.
yeah, most definitely. And I think a lot of people start off without a plan or a strategy, right?
Oh yeah.
Those two things are wildly different. And they're just going. And some of them get to, 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, and then they stop because they're like, oh, wait, there needs to be maybe an exit strategy. There maybe needs to be just a plan in place or some math in place, or, the customer experience needs to evolve, all of these things. And I know that you help implement processes and procedures and strategy. So where do you find, like, how do you get them started? How do you help them align with their vision, or maybe create a vision for them?
Yeah, that's usually where we start, and we don't create a vision for them, but
Right.
we help them uncover what their vision is and put language around it, because we can't tell them what to do, but just helping sort of clarify where they wanna get to, starting with that purpose, figuring out what their core values are. Core values are things that you uncover, they're ways we behave. People like us do things like this, and so we help them through that. Often companies that we work with, well, they're always a going concern. It's not, we don't work with startups, so it's usually a company that's got some revenue, they've worked for a while doing their thing, they're good at what they do, like, they're very good at their craft, customers like them, they're good at it. They have strong businesses, but as you said, they can get stuck. They get stuck at 5 million, 10 million, 15, 25 million. And
Mhm.
it's usually the systems and processes that haven't kept up with wherever it is they want to go. So what we find is that you start hearing things, again, it's a successful business, but we start hearing things like, you know what? we used to have more fun. You know what? We used to make more money doing less work. You know what? I just wish it could go back to the way it used to be. That's what we start to hear. And the thing is, you can go back in terms of revenue for sure, but you can't go back in time, right? Things have new competitors have come along, new technology is around. You can't go backwards. And so you really need to level up those systems and processes to make it fun again, to make better profit again, to do all of those things that they're just frustrated by and struggling with.
Yeah. And it's funny because the systems and processes do align to the core values, right? And not having the core values in place and not living the core values is often where those systems or processes that you believe that you created might have the opportunity to fail forward a little bit for the interim, right? Until you
Yeah.
realize you hit that
Yeah.
moment of realization and you're like, am I living this core value? For example, a core value that I love is, having fun and enjoying the moment. That's an easy one. But like, are you having fun? Like, what is fun? Who's defining fun? Is that a word or platitude? Are we really living or creating a core value that makes sense? Because yeah, we want work to be fun. We're spending the majority of our time there,
Yep.
but we still have work to do, like,
Yeah.
eh,
And that's why when we help companies uncover these core values, core values are things that are already there.
mm,
Either you are already having fun at work and that is a core value and you make sure it happens in everything that you do, or you're not, in which case that's not a core value, it's aspirational.
mhm.
I was working with a landscape contractor who I've worked with for years. And when we were uncovering core values, fun was, I don't think that was yeah, no, it was. That was the exact word, fun. And they they said the way they described it is it's the difference between having a 50-pound bag of soil on your back, going uphill in the rain, in the mud, and saying, man, this sucks. Or saying, man, this sucks. And it's those two reactions, right? Because work can suck, but either you find ways to enjoy it even in the suck or you don't. And so for them, that was the fun value. And I think it really applied to them as well. You could see it in all of their staff.
Yeah, I love that. And so what's your most absolute favorite core value that you've helped create in companies that that they can stick to?
I mean, honestly, they usually do stick to them.
Yeah, they need to.
One of my favorite core values though is one of ours at Bellrock, which is we do we we do the right thing even when it's hard.
Mhm,
And we have sort of our idea of what right is. And for us, one of my beliefs, and it's gone through the company, is that we shouldn't get paid for time served. We should get paid for results, which means we don't sign contracts with our clients. And if they're not happy, they shouldn't pay us. And we have had a couple of circumstances where they didn't feel that they got the value. I would dispute it. That's not the point. I didn't, because that's our guarantee. If you don't think there's value there, then you're probably right, because you're not going to do the things we recommended. So we probably shouldn't get paid for that. Shame on us. We should have known better.
yeah, most definitely. Evaluating those, even as a business owner, evaluating those that will take action from the ideas that you put into place or work with them to grow and create. I think that's a very you can't hold somebody's hand, right? You have to trust. You have to really lean into their integrity and their ability to take action, right? And push them alongside it's a partnership.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
so yeah, and being transparent and honest in the beginning in these kind of partnerships of like, look, the expectation, because we speak our expectations, is that you have to take action. And if you don't take action, then it doesn't serve me and it doesn't serve you. And what doesn't serve us doesn't serve us. Right.
Yeah, we even have a concept called the verbal upfront contract, which can apply in this case because it's saying you need to do certain things and we need to do certain things, and it only works if we are both doing our things. So if I notice you not doing your things, how do you want me to respond to that? And almost always they say something. Tell us about it. We're not paying you money to do nothing. And so I say, great. And when I say something to you, how are you going to react? Do you get angry? Do you quietly contemplate? And all of this is just really reinforcing the commitment that they are making that we are going to work on this together. And similarly, we invite them to say something to us. And the other thing that does for us is, and this happens in any industry, when the client just isn't doing the thing that you need them to do, and people start wringing their hands, oh, should we say something? I don't know. I don't want to upset them. Like, what should we do? Well, we've already decided in advance what we're going to do. We're going to tell you right away. And you've asked us to do that. So there's no worry about what are we supposed to do when the inevitable thing happens. We've already decided that at the beginning of the relationship.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. They're agreements, right?
Yeah,
And especially with contractors, they know agreements.
they
Um,
do.
so making sure that even when they run their business, they have to go back to, well, what do you do in your business to get people to have buy-in? What do you do in your business to really, have them take action? Well, you have agreements and you have spoken expectations. And so I love that. And when you implement these processes and procedures and you implement core values and missions and probably North Stars and BHAGs, all of these great things, how do you teach them to get buy-in from their team?
Well, I love that question. We do it through helping them with their communication skills and change management. So, from a leadership perspective, the leader in any sort of change management has three main roles. They're assembling some sort of coalition of the willing, where they get people, their disciples that are going to go out there and help spread the message. And that doesn't mean necessarily the management team. That means whoever it is that has a stronger voice in the organization that people listen to and are interested in following. So there's the communication side of it. What are they supposed to communicate? Which has to do with the vision. They're supposed to be sort of forward looking. As you said, this is our North Star. This is where we're all going. And also helping their managers to know how to say what's in it for each individual. Because the leader sets the big picture expectation. The managers are the ones that connect it back to the individuals. And of course, in some cases, the leader is the manager, but that's okay. They're wearing two different hats when they're doing these different things. So yeah, we help them with all of that kind of communication and change management strategy.
And how would you suggest the leader to be the leader of the manager role, right? You're wearing multiple hats.
Mhm.
Eventually, the leader needs to be the leader, and the manager, you need to hire a manager,
Yeah.
right? And so that in itself can be difficult, because they could also be the person that is in the truck
Mhm.
doing the job. So that's the grainy point, right? And it's a hard point for contractors, and especially to move themselves out of a truck when they're like, this is my skill, this is my passion, this is what I love, right? Well, like, how do you help navigate the
Yeah.
growth?
It's as you said, it's such a common challenge, and it's even worse because they went and did that trade for however long they did before they started the company. They're really good at it. They have a lot of technical skill, but they probably didn't go to school to learn how to be a manager or a leader. And they probably haven't practiced very much either. In fact, probably their whole philosophy around leadership and management is, well, I'm not going to do it the way that guy did it when I worked for him because he was awful and that's why I had to start my own thing, right? Like that's often the orientation is not that. And what? If not that, then what? And so we start by just giving them the answer to the question, what does a president do for a living? Like, what is the job actually? Because it isn't being in the truck. And sometimes you do need to be in the truck. I get it. But your most important job is the leadership job. That's the piece that can't be delegated to anyone. Other people can be in the truck. You're the only one that can lead. So let's talk about what those duties are when it comes to leadership. Make sure you're aware, support you in executing on those so that you start to get comfortable with them and realize that of anything, that's the stuff that's most important and can't be delegated.
I love that. Yeah. And then how do you create more leaders? Right?
Well,
So that's the other yeah, that's the goal is like, yes, you can your vision will lead the company. Your leadership will lead others into leadership. And I think maybe if you could help me define leadership versus management,
sure.
that would help the listeners kind of understand where we're going with this.
Yeah, well, and I really appreciate the question because exactly that's how do you create a leader? Well, first of all, we have to say what a leader is. How
Yeah,
do you create a manager? Well, first you got to say what is a manager in the first place? Aren't they the same thing? And they're not. They're different skills. So the best analogy I've ever heard for this comes from Stephen Covey, who wrote a great book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talks about this fable of a corporate airplane that crashes in the jungle and everybody in the company is there and like miraculously everyone survives unscathed except for the pilot. And so here they are, they don't know where they're going or what to do. But luckily, the belly of the plane opens up and all these machetes start falling out. And so the individual contributors, the guys in the truck, they start hacking their way through the jungle. And the managers are standing behind them and they're sharpening the tools and, putting, you need to rest and you need to get in there and giving them water and making sure that they have food and making sure that everything's organized so that they can cut through the jungle as efficiently as possible. And then finally, the leader climbs a tree and looks around and says, I got good news and bad news. The good news is we're making great progress, but the bad news is we're going in the wrong direction. The city's over there. And to me, that's it, right? Like the leader sets the vision and charts the way. The managers execute on that vision, make sure that all of the resources are organized such a way that we can do it. And then the individual contributors are out there hacking their way through the jungle.
I love it. I love that. Yeah, that makes the most sense. And then I also love that the leader failed forward and was
Yeah.
admitting that, oh, yeah, I directed us the wrong way. And
Yeah.
I think that takes a lot of courage, vulnerability, and, deep honesty with yourself. And I think that's a real characteristic that needs to be defined in a leadership role. And so, what characteristics, when it comes to leadership, what what is needed when it comes to being in those kind of roles? Because I know you talked about,
Yeah.
they have specific kind of duties and things, but really what like human experience do they need to understand and learn?
Yeah. Again, wonderful question. And you can picture leadership like a tent. Okay. And it's got 5 poles, one in the middle and then one on every corner. And so the pole in the middle, and the goal of being a great leader is to create as many cubic meters as you can under this tent. So we want our poles to get really high. And the pole in the middle that's sort of holding everything up is character. And character is the attributes that you were just describing. They're vulnerable, they're honest, we can trust them. We can predict what their reactions are going to be. They don't surprise us with their reactions. So that's a strong leader component is character. And then on the different corners, we have the ability to manage change. We have the ability to, like, actually, they're just technical ability to do work if they're, competent or not. The ability to communicate as well. Like, how are their skills and their interpersonal skills, and how do they do in terms of, expressing what they need and setting expectations and delegation and galvanizing people behind a vision. And then the fifth one just slipped right out of my head.
That
Look
happens.
at me fail forward.
Yeah, that happens. I think that the great part about leadership is that is forever changing based on your self-awareness, and your self-awareness is continuously growing. And I believe that investing in one of my core values is continuously investing in myself. And so what I want to ask is how would you suggest them to continuously invest in themselves and continuously be a learner and know that, as you grow more self-aware, there's more things that you just simply do not know. Like you're constantly going
Yeah.
to be there's no level of being like, look, I'm a leader. Like this is who I am, this is what I've got, and like I'm done. There's
Yeah.
no done.
Yeah, that's great. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is that it's actually the people who are often least competent that think they know the most, and the people who actually know the most feel that they are less competent, and it's because they know more about what they don't know.
Mhm.
So, how should a leader invest in themselves? Well, whoever's listening to this right now, you've already made great progress. So, congratulations, because this is a great way to invest in yourself, be exposed to new ideas, be exposed to different perspectives. You don't have to agree with everything, but good for you for just putting yourself out there and starting to learn. And then of course we have a management training program. So so same shameless self-promotion, that's another great way to do it. But yeah, take classes, read things, listen to podcasts, talk to people, be curious. At the end of the day, be curious. And if you can just find it somehow to ask one more question every time, then man, are you going to learn a lot more.
Oh man, you're my favorite. So leadership is like my favorite topic in the world. And then you said stay curious and ask more questions and lean into the curiosity, right? Like that's my favorite thing. It's like what I don't know, I don't know. What I do know, I do know. And it's what I do know is like it's not that my job to go out and be like preaching to the world. It's like, hey, I learned this. Like this is
Yeah.
something that has really helped me. And maybe you don't know this and that's okay, like let's just learn it together. Having that open hand versus the closed fist, really understanding that, you know, everyone is different. There's no thought that is the same. And uh, that's my favorite. And having a human centric approach, right? Like understanding that people are people when it comes to leadership. I think like those are the things that I have learned from my perspective. And leadership courses have immensely helped me. So tell me about your leadership courses. Tell me about what you teach and what the walk away kind of learning or what
Sure.
their infinite possibilities are.
Yeah, well, we have all sorts of courses that people can find on our website. What's most important to us beyond anything else is that they actually use some of the tools that we're teaching. And I think there are a lot of programs out there that don't put enough emphasis on that. So there's this idea, oh, if you took away one or two things, that's great. No, no, no. We want you to at least try, 80% of it.
Mhm.
And if it's not working, that's fine. That's different. That's different than not even trying. So
Mhm.
the way our programs work is we teach things like time management and how to set expectations and how to delegate and meeting rhythms and having difficult conversations and how to motivate people and how to develop people and managing high performing teams, all sorts of different topics. But what sort of the framework that we use is we deliver the class for 3 hours once a month on whatever the topic is. And then every class comes with one-on-one coaching. So everybody gets the class and they get the tools and the class is online, but they spend about 30-40% of the time in breakouts, like working through the different things with each other. And then they go and they use the systems, and then a couple weeks later, they meet with someone one-on-one to talk about how it went, which helps reinforce the accountability. But also, the first time you try something, you're not necessarily going to be the best. And so sometimes that discourages people from keeping going. And so the one-on-ones are there to encourage them to try again and maybe help nudge them in different directions so that they can, do it even better the next time. And again, sometimes some things just don't work for some people. That's fine. That's cool. But try it before you make that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. What you don't know. And what you do know, you need to take action on it because your brain actually wants you to. So, like,
Yeah.
when you're learning something and you're like, oh my gosh, like it sparks, it hits right there. It's a dopamine hit. And it's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to put this into action. This makes sense. Well, your brain doesn't actually want to stop the action. And so you lean into this and, it's not just taking a course, it's living what you've
Yes.
learned. And I think that's really important. It's like, I can go to conferences, I can take leadership courses all day long. If it's not 1 to 2 things, it's leadership changes your life
Mhm.
if you allow it, right? And learning how to delegate, learning how to time manage, your calendar is what you value. It's not busy work.
Mhm.
And so it's really important to develop these skills, this mindset as you grow as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a president, as a CEO, it doesn't matter what revenue size you are.
Mhm.
Investing in yourself, investing the time, because again, your time is scarce, infinite. It is limited. It is all these beautiful things. It's non-existent.
Mm.
But if you can put yourself and take yourself away from the business for just, a weekend and 3 hours, and really lean into this, you will pay yourself in dividends.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that's why we run it 3 hours once a month,
yeah.
because we want people to, like, deeply learn the things that we're talking about. It's not exposure is important as well, but really, really using these foundational tools is what we're trying to reinforce, with what we're teaching, but also the design of the program itself.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. It's a process and a system, and you lean in and trust the process.
Mhm.
And I think I hear that a lot. Trust the process.
Yeah.
Trust the process. And it really is a process. It's a process of taking your
Trust the
uh,
proven process.
it's a proven process, right? Not just all
I think that's really important point, though. There are a lot of processes out there. Some of them are proven and some of them aren't.
right.
Yeah.
Right. That's absolutely true. But when you do take these leadership courses and when you do, invest in yourself, lean into that heavily is what I would want to say to others. It's like
Mhm.
it's a gift to yourself.
Mhm.
And you have the ability again to take action or not, but my God, like your brain is just pushing you. Your
And
body
it's
is
fun.
and it's so fun.
It's fun. It's fun to get good at something new.
Right.
That's why people play guitar. I mean, there are a few rock stars out there, granted, but
Yeah.
most people are just practicing the guitar because it feels good and it's kind of fun and they like to get better at something. So even just think it's just fun. Just think of it that way. You're just learning something new and getting better at it.
I love this. And then if someone would want to start, you know, developing leadership skills, what books would you recommend? Because you already recommended uh, two great books, I believe. But like, where would you start with that learning path?
I'd start with 7 Habits by Stephen Covey because it's just such a classic and it's such a great book. It's also, though, a super dense book, and that can be really hard. So, if people are like, "I don't have time for that kind of thing," and, "Oh, there's too much in here," then I would recommend The 5 Temptations of a CEO by Patrick Lencioni. He wrote a very famous book called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team that lots of people talk about. But
Mhm.
before that, he wrote The Five Temptations of a CEO. And I think it's a great leadership book. It's a fable. Everything he writes almost is fables. So they're really easy to consume and you can sort of picture yourself in this situation. And so that's another great choice. And then the book that I'm totally immersed in right now and I've just gotten a certification in is called Influence by Robert Cialdini. And in it, he talks about the 7 principles of persuasion and how you can ethically influence people to hear the word yes more often. So those will be my top 3.
I love that. And if you were to give one piece of advice to contractors as we wrap this up,
Yep.
what would you want to tell them?
Okay, I don't think they're going to like it. But what I'm going to say is if there's a way to throw money at that problem, do that. Because that's the easiest way to solve most things. So if you're the guy or the woman who's sitting on the floor at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out your bookkeeping, throw money at that problem. Go hire a bookkeeper. And if you are the person who's trying to, I don't know, like you're driving job to job to job and you're just in the truck all the time and you can't get to any of the leadership stuff, throw money at that problem. Hire someone to do that. Because your value, the most important job for you is as the leader, is to do the leader stuff. And anything you can throw money at is the simplest solution you're going to find.
What great advice. And I think, like you're right. The mind goes two ways with that. You're like, oh, you just want me to spend more money. And like,
Yeah.
no, we want you to buy back your time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's right.
Mhm.
Oh, but we can't afford it. Well, you can't afford not to. Because if you're up at 3 in the morning doing your books, you're going to burn out. You're not going to be as good at your job. You're not going to be selling as much. Your company is going to be so limited because you've decided that your time is this infinite resource, and it isn't.
What a great discussion today, Tara. Thank you so much for joining us. If someone wanted to contact you, tell us how they would get a hold of you, tell us anything that we can reach out to you and find you. And we'll
Yeah,
drop
well,
it in the blog.
our website is www.bellrock.ca, and they can find me, Tara Landes, on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on. And listeners, what a great episode. If you love this episode, leave us a review, leave us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And Tara, thank you again.
Thank you.